Welcome to a show where you will hear about how our liberty is being eroded by the very people that swear an oath to protect it.
Today, the president signed a big new anti-terrorism bill that would expand the government's ability to track down terrorists, but at some cost.
On this show, we will discuss many of the lies that the government that hates us, by the way, we will discuss the lies that the people in positions of power and influence spread every day.
And what is the best way to confuse children? Confuse them about their sexuality, confuse them about their gender, expose them to things that their little brains are not ready for yet. That is how they are confusing children. It is leading to chaos, and Big Daddy government, of course, can be there to pick us all up and take care of us at the end of it.
We will also talk about how current elected leadership at all levels of government has been corrupted by power and control, as well as discuss the types of leadership needed to correct our republic's course.
We the people. It was time to remember that we the people are the government.
Providing assistance for the Ukrainians to defeat the Russians, that's the number one priority for the United States right now.
I am your host, Larry Linton, retired U.S. Navy Command Master Chief and prior Tennessee House of Representatives District 12 candidate, and welcome to the Liberty, Leadership, and Lies podcast. Welcome to this week's show, ladies and gentlemen. Pretty soon, and I will be headed out on another consulting gig. This time, it will be back to Ardmore, Oklahoma, and the surrounding counties. It's been a busy past few days here in the Linton household. Of course, we celebrated Father's Day. This was my 8th Father's Day without the man that raised me, and the first without my biological father. Many of you know he passed away Christmas Day last year. That is bittersweet, but softened by the fact that my daughter spent the day with me. I've often said this, but one of the best titles that I've ever been given during my lifetime is the title of Dad. My family and I attended worship services at our church, followed by lunch at a new local restaurant, and then we capped it off with one of my least favorite activities, shopping. But it was time spent with a person who is the reason I get to be called Dad. My daughter also gifted me with a wonderful book titled The U.S. Constitution and Other Writings. It's a beautiful hardcover book. I posted pictures on my social media pages, and it contains a great compilation of documents pertaining to the founding of our great republic and many others dealing with the cause of liberty. It is a book I will read and treasure. I also had a meeting last week that I really did not get into the details of during the previous episode of the podcast. I met with somebody that could be considered a mover and shaker within the state Republican Party. He is also a fierce advocate for conservative principles here in Tennessee. We discussed many different topics, but one in particular which Republican Party voters here in Tennessee need to pay attention to. I would like to urge every Republican in Tennessee that listens to this podcast to contact the Republican Party State Executive Committee members and ask them about proposed or considered changes to what constitutes a bona fide Republican in this state. I have heard rumors that there may be more changes to the Tennessee Republican Party's bylaws that, if put into place, would exclude people from participating in the political process here in Tennessee by changing the requirements to be a candidate for office and run as a bona fide Republican. We'll talk about that in a bit as it relates to lies told and lies believed. There are some logistical problems getting Congresswoman Harshbarger on the program for an interview this week. Her staff and I are still working out some scheduling conflicts, so I hope to have her on the program here in the near future. I would also like to remind the audience members here in Tennessee to keep the pressure on your state representatives as it relates to the August special session of the General Assembly called by trans-Republican Governor Bill Lee. Any elected official who labels themselves as a Republican and that proposes unconstitutional infringements on the citizens' right to keep and bear arms, not only in the great state of Tennessee, but also anywhere in the country, is not, I repeat, not a Republican. They are a trans-Publican, meaning they are a communist that runs as and has convinced through lies the voters that they are a Republican. In other words, they identify as a Republican. Sounds eerily similar to the other mental illness problem running rampant in our culture today, doesn't it? Except these trans-publicans are not mentally ill. They know exactly what they are doing. They are robbing the electorate of their liberty through lies. One of the other topics this mover and shaker and I discussed is one of the biggest problems with conservatism and conservatives today. We have talked about it before on the show, is how conservatives are not really very good at what I like to call political collectivism. Conservatives are individualists by their very nature, so when it comes to working with and supporting other conservatives, there is definitely a lot of room for growth in the conservative movement. Because on the opposite side of the spectrum, we have the communists. They are expert-level collectivists. And by not being able to counter their unified and collective front, our republic is where it is. The commies are destroying our constitutional republic because there is not a unified front in the political party that is supposed to be the home for conservatives. We saw how that unfolded with the debt ceiling fight. Heck, we can't even call that a fight, if you know what I mean. The trans-publican Speaker of the House in the Congress gave the usurper-in-chief and his commie cabal everything they wanted in that deal. Only a few conservatives stood against him. The deal, another one of those pieces of legislation named using the artful lies tactic, because it was titled Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2023. It is everything to do with fiscal irresponsibility. But anyway, it passed by a vote of 314 to 117 in the House of Representatives. That means 149 so-called Republicans voted for perpetual debt bondage of the U.S. citizens by putting a date limit, not a dollar limit, but a date limit on increased spending by the federal government. On the Senate side, 17 so-called Republicans there joined the communists in that chamber to also pass the deal. Ladies and gentlemen, it's just further evidence that our government hates us. Which takes us into today's lie. The lie that a majority of Americans believe today. The lie they tell themselves every 2 years just before election days. Yes, election days, not election day. That lie is, my vote doesn't matter. Before we get too deep into that, I have to tell you about a couple of lies. One of which I ran headlong into this past week. Actually, it was a campaign slogan that is really the lie. That is the Biden administration's slogan of Build Back Better. Which reminds me, has anybody seen a sign, t-shirt, hat, poster, or flyer anywhere in the public domain with that slogan on it? Isn't any of the commie supporters proud enough to wear or display that slogan more than halfway through the child sniffer's first, and most likely last, term in office? You would think that with 81 million voters out there that the public domain would still be swamped with those signs, t-shirts, hats, everywhere, right? The man that received the most votes for president in the history of the United States of America, yes, even more than Barack Hussein Obama, you would think there would still be supportive signs up all over the fruited plains, wouldn't you? Well, I haven't seen one. Many of you know that my business takes me on travel all over the United States. Since the 2020 election, I have been in numerous states and various locales throughout those states. I have seen hundreds of thousands of people in airports, cities, and towns, and in the businesses in those locales. Not once have I seen any of those things, nor anything remotely similar. If any of you still see them, please take a picture of it and email it to me, along with the location you saw it at. Let's do an informal type of poll, okay? Send the photo and location to Larry at libertyleadershipandlies.com. Again, that is Larry at libertyleadershipandlies.com. Anyway, as it relates to Build Back Better, many of you know that I have been in the market for a new truck for a while now. You may also know that I found one through my local Chevy dealership. I found it on the 22nd of May. Ladies and gentlemen, this Build Back Better lie has nothing to do with the shortage of microchips needed to complete the assembly of the truck, because the truck has already been assembled. It was shipped from its final assembly point in Oshawa, Ontario, Canada, which that's a topic for another day, but it was shipped via rail from its final assembly point on the 24th of May. It arrived at the Lawrenceville Automotive Distribution Center in Decula, Georgia on the 2nd of June. It had a scheduled delivery date of 17 June to the dealership here in Sevierville. Here we are, though, the 23rd of June, and the truck is still sitting in Georgia. The word I'm receiving is that there is a shortage of railway workers, leading to delays like this all over the country. It's not microchips, it's labor. Despite the employment numbers being touted by the Child Sniffers Administration, a shortage of labor, not parts, is delaying anything to do with Build Back Better. My best friend that I grew up with, he owns his own business in the automotive repair industry up in central New York. He has told me that he has encountered this same problem over the past 2+ years. So, my friends, nothing has been built back better. In fact, the opposite is true. Build Back Better is a lie. Oh, and we cannot forget that the slogan that the Resident-in-Chief used, it was plagiarized from the United Nations as well. The rotting bag of oatmeal for brains that resides in the White House has a long history of plagiarism and lying, which ties into this week's topic, as I'll discuss in a little bit. But the next lie also ties into this week's topic. That lie is that there is an equal system of justice in our country today. With the news about crackhead Hunter's sweetheart deal with the DOJ that will only see probation for tax evasion and firearms violations proves that equal justice is a huge lie. Just look at previous tax evasion convictions. Darryl Strawberry, a plea deal to one count of felony tax evasion that resulted in a prison term and home confinement for supposedly cheating the government out of more than $100,000 in taxes. Not the millions of dollars that Hunter cheated on. There are many others that served or will serve prison time for felony tax evasion. The Chrisleys, who are currently in jail. Wesley Snipes served 3 years in a Pennsylvania prison for 3 misdemeanor counts of tax evasion. Ja Rule, whose real name is Jeffrey Atkins, was sentenced to 28 months in prison. Sophia Loren, she even served 17 days in jail, even after it was later determined that she didn't cheat on her taxes. Chuck Berry did 120 days in federal prison, 4 years of probation, and 1,000 hours of community service. Pete Rose was sentenced to 5 months in jail and fined $50,000 for failing to report $354,000 in income. Martha Stewart, Nicolas Cage, Willie Nelson, and many others. Those are just some celebrity names I was able to discover in a quick internet search. I am quite sure there are many other Americans that were convicted of felony, yes, felony, tax evasion and paid fines and served time in jail for the same offenses that Hunter Biden is now getting a slap on the wrist for. Don't get me started on the gun charge either. The Ice Cream Connoisseurs Administration wants to take away law-abiding citizens' constitutionally protected right to keep and bear arms. But Hunter? No, special treatment. Just how is this possible, ladies and gentlemen? Again, it ties into today's lie. The lie we tell ourselves that my vote doesn't matter. I read an interesting take on that statement the other day. I'll couple it with my take on that lie, too. The interesting take comes from Steve Deese. He's a conservative host on Blaze TV. He's a best-selling author and the executive producer of the movie Nefarious. Speaking of the movie, I have not watched it yet. It is only available for renting right now, and I want to be able to purchase it so that I can watch it a few times. The movie comes highly recommended from a few people that I greatly respect in conservative and Christian social media circles. Anyway, let me read to you the entire thread of Steve Deese's tweet. Quote, "These are states Republicans haven't won in a presidential election in almost 40 years, and how many votes Trump received from them in 2020. California, 6,006,429. New York, 3,251,997. Massachusetts, 1,167,202. Connecticut, 714,717. Minnesota, 1,484,065. Oregon, 958,448. Washington State, 1,584,651. Illinois, 2,446,891. That's essentially 17,614,000 essentially wasted votes in a presidential election decided by less than 50,000 total votes in Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin, which, if swung the other way, would mean the Biden presidency would have never happened and we'd be much better off as a country. But Steve, some of you will lecture me, one of the first people on election night who was pointing out the fraud in real time and got the entire Blaze Facebook channel demonetized for pointing out they were stealing the election. They just steal more votes, so this is pointless. Number one, if you truly believe elections are pointless, prove your own conviction. Stop posting about candidates, get the heck off of political Twitter, and go join a militia and work on your aim. You're gonna need it if elections are pointless. Number two, look at how hard and obvious they had to cheat to win by less than 50,000 votes. If just 1% of these people would evacuate their blue state hellholes and had spread out to Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin, that's 170,000 more votes for Trump, or more than 4 times what they would conjure to claim they won in 2020. If just 10%, or 1.7 million of our people left these places and also spread out to places like Pennsylvania and Michigan instead, Democrats would be screwed. We are in a country founded by pilgrims who had to move away to find freedom. To preserve this country, as patriots, we may have to become such pilgrims again." Unquote. So, some very valid points there, I believe. First of all, it aligns with what I've been saying for a while now. If you live in one of those blue states, get out now. I mean, right now. Don't wait for things to get worse. Get to one of those states mentioned earlier where your vote not only will count, it matters significantly more than it will in California or the People's Republic of New York. It will also have the added benefit of allowing those communist sanctuaries to implode under the weight of their liberty-destroying laws and regulations. We have to let the commies eat themselves into complete destruction. The other point of Mr. Deese's tweet that ties into my viewpoint on the lie of my vote doesn't matter is this. It points to apathy and laziness of the voter. People tell themselves that lie to justify, only to themselves, not participating in our system of self-governance. Like Mr. Deese alluded to, the people that justify not voting, mostly out of apathy, but often because of sheer laziness, they do not prove their own conviction. People will complain all over social media about the current state of politics in our country, the state where, through the force of censorship, the people are forced to believe that Joe Biden received 81 million votes in the 2020 election. It's the state where people are coerced into taking an experimental vaccine in order to keep their jobs and to be able to participate in society. It's also a state where many elected officials, mostly on the communist side of the aisle that benefits from it, the state where they tell us that nobody is above the law and that there isn't a two-tier justice system in our republic. The elected leadership in this country, on both sides of the aisle, are the only beneficiaries to the lie, my vote doesn't matter, because it only solidifies their hold and control over power bases. We'll talk about some of the power bases that I refer to, and I often discuss them during my leadership consulting. Here's a preview of power bases. Pay attention to them and see if you can glean what our current elected officials are operating from when they tell us this, that, or the other lie. There's legitimate power, reward power, coercive power, informational power, referent power, and expert power. When people do not participate in our system of self-governance because they tell themselves the lie that their vote doesn't matter, it only increases the government's hold on those power bases. And when I say both sides of the aisle, I mean the uniparty and the communists. This is where the conservatives need to exert some influence. They need to support each other, especially where it is needed, as I was discussing with my new friend in the meeting I had last week. Let's say you live in a district that is pretty conservative politically. You have solid conservative representation at the local, state, and federal level. It is rare that all three of those things are true, but for argument's sake, let's operate off of that assumption. Does this mean you can sit on your laurels while the rest of Rome is burning? Well, for the most part, that is what is happening in our republic. We'll have some pockets of strong conservatism here and there, rare, but they are out there. Well, the people of that fine district or county or state cannot rest on their laurels any longer, because there are conservatives out there that need help in the arena they are fighting in. These conservatives often do not get the support needed in their campaigns or in getting their messaging out, and often it is because what is supposed to be the home of the conservative movement, the county, state, or national Republican Party, does not actively support them. Well, that doesn't mean that conservatives shouldn't support them, but that's often the case. And complacency kills conservatism. So when you tell yourself the lie that my vote doesn't matter, what you are saying is that you're either too lazy to vote during election season or that you really don't care. You'll be a keyboard warrior on the internet and social media, but you will not expend the time, money, and effort needed to turn this ship around. When you don't vote and tell yourself and others that your vote doesn't matter, it's just a cop-out. Because if you truly believe that, you wouldn't be saying it at all. You wouldn't be broadcasting it. You would be stocking up on beans and bullets and practicing your aim. When the votes truly don't matter, that is where the entire system breaks down. So don't believe that lie that you tell yourself out of apathy or laziness. Get out and vote. Get out and advocate for conservative candidates, and not just where you live. Support them. Throw them a buck or two, because every little bit helps. Trust me, I ran a campaign. I know that it takes money to win. And you have to do this everywhere across the nation. The tide is starting to turn because of these culture war skirmishes that involve children. But you know what? Thomas Paine, around the time of the birth of our great nation, had this to say on the matter. Quote, "These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country. But he that stands by it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered, yet we have this consolation with us that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. What we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly. It is dearness only that gives everything its value. Heaven knows how to put a proper price upon its goods, and it would be strange indeed if so celestial an article as freedom should not be highly rated." Unquote. So, ladies and gentlemen, don't be a sunshine patriot or a summer soldier. Take that stand now in these times that try men's souls. Vote. Vote in every election. When you vote, try and bring as many people in your neighborhood with you. Encourage. Heck, just don't encourage people to get out and vote. Shame those that don't get out and vote. There are people taking a stand in the arena all over this country that need your support and your help in getting their message out. And if your state Republican Party is anything like Tennessee's, Not voting in every election allows the party to choose who represents you. Too often that choice is a poor one as it relates to liberty and truth. Well, that's it for this week's episode, ladies and gentlemen. I enjoyed spending this past half hour or so with you all, and I'm looking forward to doing it again next week from Oklahoma. Of course, I need to plug the show again and ask for the audience's help by sharing it with everyone in your contact list as well as on your social media pages. You can also go to the show's homepage and select the support button once again. I've shared the link on my social media pages and the website of libertyleadershipandlies.com. Again, the website is libertyleadershipandlies.com. All one word, no punctuation, no spaces. I would also ask that you ask the people in your sphere of influence to subscribe and follow the show, especially on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, so we can get the show moving up the charts. In closing, we have this week's wisdom from God's Word, and today it comes to us from Proverbs 19:15. Laziness brings on deep sleep, and the shiftless go hungry. The laziness that is publicly indicated by the lie, "My vote doesn't matter," has led to half the eligible population not voting. The deep sleep part of the truth in that verse is now turning into a comatose condition. That condition has led to a government that no longer allows free speech, that no longer allows for bodily autonomy, that weaponizes the judicial system against their political enemies, that only increases their hold on power and control in a republic where the citizen is supposed to be the sovereign. Don't allow yourself to believe a lie that is only told to justify apathy or laziness. Don't allow yourself to believe a lie that prevents you actually helping conservatives all across the country get into elected office and push back against the evil that the communists are enacting. Once again, thank you all for listening this week, and I pray that you enjoy the rest of your weekend. Until next week, stand in the arena with me, reveille. It's time to wake up.